Imagine meeting a race for the very first time after generations of waiting. How would you feel? Join us as Gimpo, an ambitious delegate, steps into the unknown and faces the awe-inspiring reality of the human race. Don't miss out on this epic journey. Subscribe now and press the bell icon to stay updated on the latest adventures. Gimpo was thrilled with himself. He had successfully passed all the tests and was selected for a crucial delegation to meet the first alien race his people had ever encountered. It had been generations since the initial contact, and negotiations had been dragging on. Gimpo's greatest wish was to finally close the negotiations that his great-grandfather had started. As he entered the room where the meeting was set to take place, he paused by the door to announce his arrival for first contact. "I remember when we had to knock," grumbled an older member of the delegation. The initial stages of the discussions had been conducted on the planet's surface. This was the first time the meeting was to be held on a human ship, which had been specially modified to accommodate their race. "Do you think these slow beings took 8 months to alter a vessel?" The older member continued to grumble. "Oh, would you show some respect, sir?" Gimpo interjected. "The machinery may be more complex than ours." It was true that the few pieces of technology they had received were reverse-engineered. They weren't marvels of functionality, but they were beyond complex by the race's standards. From the reports Gimpo had read, the human technology was quite advanced. "Ah, welcome, delegates," a human said, standing up as the group entered the room. The delegates felt their breath catch in their throats. They had only seen holographic images of this race, identified as humans. "I see the humans are not here to impress power upon us," whispered the older member of the group, looking up at the human who stood at least twice their height. They had naturally assumed that the race would be imposing. The meeting was not going as planned. The delegates were surprised to find that the human representatives were the same height as them. The data team would undoubtedly face criticism for this oversight. "I hope we can finish these negotiations today," said the human diplomat. "It has been a while since we started, and our people back home are eager to begin trading." "Trade, yes," the older member of the delegation barked. "We would have concluded these discussions months ago if there hadn't been so many delays." "I apologize for the delays," the human diplomat replied. "It took us some time to retrofit parts of the ship to better suit your people. I was just a newborn when you first arrived, and now I am thrilled to see our races interacting on such a grand stage." "Indeed, we have prepared all the documents you requested." With a flick of his finger on the data slate, the human diplomat sent the documents to the delegates' devices. The screens displayed all the agreed-upon provisions. "Finally, it's good to be here," Gimpo grinned as he reviewed the document. But then he noticed something unusual. "Apologies, human, but what are these numbers here?" "Numbers," the human repeated, raising an eyebrow. "Oh, those are the dates." "Thank you," Gimpo said. "But the progression seems off. Do you measure time differently from us? It never came up before, but it's possible, given our different worlds," the human explained. "I see," Gimpo said, realizing the discrepancy. The older member of the delegation marked the document with a digital stamp to indicate his agreement, and others in the group followed suit. "Perfect," the human said. "With that settled, we can now proceed with the celebration." Walking over to a wall, the human pressed a wall-mounted device. Machines immediately began producing plates of cuisine from their home world. As the other members of the delegation helped themselves to the food and drink, Gimpo gazed out the window at the crimson orb that was his home world. A view afforded to very few, but soon to become commonplace. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" the human diplomat said, walking over to stand beside Gimpo. "Yes, it is amazing," Gimpo replied. "I still remember when we first arrived here. It was a sight to behold, seeing all the cities light up the world at night." "You mean your ancestors?" the human asked. "Oh no, I was part of the crew when we first surveyed this world. That was almost 100 planetary cycles ago." Gimpo's outburst caused a pause in the celebration, and his fellows looked at him with shock. Outbursts were uncharacteristic of a diplomat. "I must apologize for my outburst," Gimpo said. "No need," the human diplomat replied. "One moment, please. The AI is still deciphering PLS. It seems to be a new term the auto-translator units haven't identified yet." The human examined his data slate as the AI worked out the meaning. Gimpo found it odd. A PL was a unit of time, something every newborn cub learned by the end of their first year. Ah, the human exclaimed excitedly. I see the meaning now. Gimpo, a PL is what my race calls a month. A month? Gimpo echoed, realizing that the humans used a different term for their unit of time. So, your race arrived here approximately 100 months ago. The human nodded. Yes, we had to take things slowly to avoid causing chaos. We gradually contacted your governments and developed vaccines to prevent diseases. That's why the process took so long. So, you must be quite old then, Gimpo asked, looking up at the human. In their culture, there were only stories and fairy tales about races living as long as the humans seemed to be suggesting. Oh boy, I do feel old. I just turned 30 last month, the human replied. 30? Gimpo's ears flopped in confusion. But you said you were among those who first found us. Oh, I'm sorry, I meant 30 years, the human corrected. Years? Gimpo heard a ping from his data slate, which translated years to roughly 12 of their planetary cycles. Gimpo felt his heart rate quicken as he did the math. So you are 361 of our planetary cycles? The entire party of diplomats froze in shock, staring at the human. The realization that this youngster was actually older than many of the nations they called home was astonishing. You mean this youngster is actually older than I am? The older member of the group asked, trembling. It was a common belief among their race that with age comes wisdom, and with wisdom comes the right to rule. Well, I suppose when you put it that way, the human said. How old are you, Gimpo? You must be a few years old. I will be roughly 2 of your human years, Gimpo replied. 2? The older member's eyes widened. So, the eldest of your number is roughly 7 by our years. Wow, no wonder you're considered elves, the older member declared. The term elves referred to beings with great wisdom and longevity. Our race kept changing, the diplomats we were talking to. We kept thinking we were doing something wrong, Gimpo admitted. I will need to have a word with our data team about this. But to think your race ages at this rate, it would explain your broadcasts. Broadcasts? The human asked, intrigued. Yes, Gimpo continued. The first thing we detected about your world was your broadcasts. We thought it was a translation error, a malfunction, or even interference that made them run at a faster rate. But to think you live your lives so quickly, it's astonishing. Are you an old member of your race? Gimpo asked, hoping the human was just particularly ancient. Oh no, the human replied. I still have my grandparents. My grandma is more machine than human these days, but she celebrated her 90th birthday recently. That's over 1,000 of your planetary cycles. So many generations in one being. Huh, Gimpo said, absorbing this information. The human paused, sensing the awkward atmosphere that had descended. I guess we're your equivalent of elves then. Elves? Gimpo repeated, hoping for a reprieve. Yes, the human explained. Back on our world, we have a story about a race of beings called elves. They look just like us but have pointed ears and live for millennia. The data slates all pinged, and the delegates paled as they saw that millennia meant thousands of years. But you don't need to worry, the human reassured them. They're just fairy tales and stories. Oh, I respect that, Gimpo said. A being living as long as you do would be the stuff of myths for us. How confident are you that they aren't out there? Well, I guess we'll need to look into the possibility of space elves, the human replied with a chuckle. Just hope they aren't the Warhammer kind. Thank you for watching, and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories.